Hello, are you here to debate? Guess not. Okay, line's going back up. Hello, are you here to debate?
Yes, I am. How are you doing today?
Chillin'. What's your name and how old are you?
I'll go by Delta if that's all right, or if you want, I can't give my real name.
No, you can give
But I'm
whatever
24.
name you want. You said Delta and 24?
Yes, sir. I'll get this out of the way. I'm a Republican. I was born to a Christian household, but I'm theist, so I'm not even going to debate you on the bullshit that is Christianity.
No problem.
And I'm about to go into the military. So I wanted to start with your first point,
Okay.
which was capitalism is harmful.
All right.
Now, do you mean that in the sense of capitalism as a concept or capitalism in America as it is now?
I would say both, probably. I believe that capitalism as a profit model, like this idea of like the constant need to create a larger and larger profit is always going to lead to some level of harm. But then the capitalism that we currently have worldwide is probably one of the most harmful things that the world's ever experienced.
And I saw other people. So you are a proprietor. You are a pusher of communism.
Yeah, I'm a Marxist. Yeah.
Okay, so obviously I could bring up the stupid stuff like, oh, but communism's never worked ever. Well, no, it does, and I have to agree with you on that standpoint. It works on small scale, but obviously absolute power corrupts absolutely, and in every case of communism thus far, it's really a dictatorship in disguise. Can we agree on that?
I would just argue that other than early indigenous tribes who are more communal in nature, we haven't been able to get to a communist society yet.
I agree with that.
But when I look at it, what I see is a lot of interference from capitalism to prevent this from happening. So I can't name
that is something that I agree with. Yes.
Yeah, I couldn't name a socialist country that hasn't been majorly interfered by from like capitalist influence to cause it to fall.
Yeah, the CIA definitely had a lot to do in Russia back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, as well as a bunch of all the other communist countries.
Yeah.
So we'll leave that at that because I do agree. Capitalism could be great, but just like communism could be great, but the problem is everyone fucks with everyone else, and we're in a shitty world right now.
Yeah, but see, like I said, I don't know that capitalism could be. I don't know that a model where you try to maximize profits. I don't know that model could.
Yeah.
Could.
Well, the last guy you had, he brought something up that I really wanted to make sure was noted, which was he was trying to say in regards to trying to get black people jobs, trying to give out loans specifically to black people, and I have to say we've done something similar to that, and it has completely fucked up everyone, and that's the student loan programs.
I don't disagree. That student loans have been a problem. Yeah, we would agree with that.
Because I really, as soon as I don't normally click on streams like this, but I really loved what you were talking about. Yeah, no, so that's all right. Number two, the trans men are men and women are men and women. I'm a very logical person, so are we talking about traditional role fulfillment, or are we talking trying to do biology? What's the specific play here?
Yeah, so I believe that men and women to be are sociological categories. They are, I believe, these categories to be not as rigid as most people believe them to be. I don't believe them to be inherently linked to anything within one sex's biology over another. So because of this, I believe that based on whatever your gender identity is, you can easily move between said categories.
Okay. So yeah, okay, I can agree with that. Number 3 is something that I think I'm rather firm on. That's gender affirming care for minors. Are you actually referring to surgeries for minors?
No, because they wouldn't need them. Just because of like the development of the body isn't ready for those specific surgeries yet. I would say if you are 15, I don't care if you get top surgery, right? I don't think
Okay.
it really matters. And I would say if you're 17, I don't care if you get bottom surgery. But prior to those ages, surgeries should be limited for those. But other than that, other than that, whatever type of gender affirming care you get, I think should just be
Okay.
individualized.
So I know chat's going off at 15, but I would like to remind everyone that if we're going back, especially you Christian people, if we're going back in time, the age of consent was conceived by modern society, and it was considered that you were an adult when you hit puberty, aka 12 and 13. Because I'm watching chat right now going, oh, disgusting. Well, you should definitely go off on Japan, because isn't the age of consent in Japan like 13 or something?
I mean, we have places in our country where the age of consent is 16, right?
Exactly. So like this is not a problem. I'm more referring to like anything. I have to agree with you. Anything under 15, it really should not be a problem, because what I also think people forget is 50, 60 years ago, boys were the adult of the house at 15. You know, they were out doing work. They were out working in the mines as fully adults. And
the
it's
children
only in
do yearn
recent
for the mines.
history that we've started moving up the age of consent and all that. Now, don't
Yeah,
get me
I don't.
wrong. I
I
agree.
personally don't understand like what they're not going to be able to name some thing in the brain that changes between 15 and 16 or 15 and 18 where
Yeah, no,
somebody won't be able
it's
to
a
make
really hard
the
line to distinguish. It is.
well, just when it comes to them making a decision about their body, we obviously see a distinction when it comes to like how they engage with adults. Like this, I
Yes.
oftentimes
Yes,
think that people don't
definitely.
realize the reason that like we try to set a higher age of consent is because of the way that children interact with adults. um, this is why like 16-year-olds and 16-year-olds having sex is not really a big deal to anybody because they're not engaging with an adult in the action, not engaging with there's not that power dynamic. When it comes to top surgery, I don't see an issue with somebody who's 15 getting top surgery. Somebody would have to lay out a pretty convincing reason why, but I just don't think many people can do that.
Yeah, 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 I can see
Someone
where you're
said
coming from
15
on
years
that.
old doesn't even know if they're
For
gay
me,
or
it's
not. Fucking stupid.
for 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 me, it's the idea of pushing that kind of thing in schools.
Is it
And
where?
I don't
I
mean
don't know where it
I
would.
don't mean
Go ahead.
sorry, go ahead. I was saying I don't mean more specifically. Let me put this correctly. So pushing it in schools is no. I don't think that schools, considering that they are mandatory by the government at this point, God, truancy officers, that's a whole nother thing. I don't think it should be pushed at all.
But what do you mean by pushed?
Um, so, for instance, we have health class in high school, or we had
Mm-hmm.
health class, I should say. Health class was the one class where it's like, okay, we can talk about this stuff, but the problem is my cousin, his fucking he was questioning stuff, and he's like 12, and his what was it? His literature teacher was trying to push that, hey, you guys need to give us your pronouns. And I don't agree with that because so I'm 24. My mom was a correctional nurse for a while, and back when I was about 14, I got the chance to go to Hayes State Prison in Georgia. And I met a man by the name of Davis. He was in prison for a life sentence for manslaughter, and he told me the biggest piece of advice that I have ever heard, which is really this: you can kill, you can rob, you can steal, you can be the biggest, baddest motherfucker up in this prison, but you do not ever lay hands or touch a child, because children are the only truly innocent people in this world. How do you feel about that statement?
Yeah, I think hurting children is bad.
Okay. My big thing with the gender affirming care and all the trans stuff, it isn't about, if you want to get surgery to become a woman from a man or become a man from a woman, do it. But don't shove it in everyone else's faces. Can we agree on that?
Well, what do you mean by shoving it? Like, most of the time trans people just exist. What do we mean by like shoving it in people's faces?
So obviously I'm Republican and I'm over here. I worked for pizza for a long time, and I've had several instances, especially recently, where I'm talking to people and I said, "Have a nice day, ma'am," and quite literally they came out and said, "Did you just fucking assume my gender?" And it doesn't happen often, but it's often enough that it's becoming a problem, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would just say this kind of feels okay. So a few things. One, I
Okay.
think the average person doesn't give a fuck if you assume their gender. The average person is just going to correct you and move on.
Yeah, no,
right?
I agree.
There may be people who are hypersensitive to things like that, man or woman, like trans or cis. There may be people that are hypersensitive to their gender, to assumptions about their gender for whatever reason. Those people have their reasons. Those people are, I'm not gonna get mad at them if they're like hypersensitive about that, right? But I think most people, they're not gonna give a shit. Like if somebody calls me ma'am, I'm like, okay. And they did. I used to work on a phone line, and people would call me. I used to work for like an insurance company, and people would call me ma'am, and I'd be like, the fuck. And I would be like, well, I thought it was obvious, but maybe it's not. I think my voice is a little higher than normal, but I didn't give a fuck. I half the time didn't even correct them. I was like, I just don't care. It doesn't affect me outside of this phone call. You know what I mean? And I think that's the way most people probably are.
I agree with that. See, this is why I really wanted to talk with you, because you're real. Like, you're not just pushing something stupid. You're open to argument, and you're open to defend what you believe in. What pissed me off a lot is I've talked with people before, and they don't want to defend it. As soon as something is said that challenges it, they break down and call me a fascist.
Well, it would just depend on if you have any fascist leanings, right? How do you feel about Project 2025?
No, so
well, you're not a Christian, so you would hate Project 2025. I don't know why I assume you would hate it. If you're not a Christian, you wouldn't like it.
So the last one that I wanted to go over with you was the abolish police and prisons. I actually half agree with that. One, because I've seen both sides of it. I've seen good cops, I've seen bad cops, and I've seen good prisons, and I've seen bad prisons. So my question is, what would you think about actual reform? And I'm not talking like, oh, we need to reform our prisons like what's going on right now, because we all know it's bullshit. I'm more referring to, so for instance, isn't it Sweden that has the kind of open prison where people, even with life sentences, they still go to school, they have a car?
Yeah, so Norway and Sweden tend to have the prison models that we as like abolitionists like to look at. The movement of abolition just calls for a removal of the system of justice that we currently have, which would be a carceral or retributive state of justice, with a replacement of a transformative or restorative state of justice. So we're basically looking at. Oh, go ahead.
I'm gonna just respond to something in chat. I wasn't referring to good American prisons. There really aren't any. Sorry, I guess I misinterpreted that.
Yeah, so it's basically looking at replacing the systems of these institutions from the ground up. So we start from the bottom up. We don't start from the
Yeah.
top down. So we don't abolish them first. We first focus on the systemic issues that cause crime. We focus on those. We focus on uh, rehabilitation. We focus on community help. Like these things will make it so that the need for police and prisons, the way we have them right now, will essentially fall to the wayside.
Yeah, I definitely agree. On the other side of that, the cops thing, it is. I was raised in the South, and I was raised by a military family. I have my heroes. So a great example of that is Desmond Doss. I love my country. I know it's kind of a brainwash thing, like, oh, and I know my country's bad, but at the same time it's mine. I love my country. So it really does sadden me to see just how bad police have got. But do you think that it would be beneficial to completely remove police, or would it be more beneficial to constitute an entire crackdown?
So
I'd like to hear your side.
so my opinion is that police didn't get bad. Police have always been bad, right? Police are
Yeah,
honestly they're working the way the system intended them to work, right? Ever since the dawning of vagrancy laws and the creation of like the police as we know them, they're working the way that they're supposed to work, which is throwing as many people into prison as humanly possible, so the state can use them for their labor, right? That's how it's supposed to be. My thing is when it comes to the way policing is, um, police in their current state can do nothing but oppress because that's sort of what the system and the state want them to do. We can say maybe there's a world that exists where um, we can get there without changing, but police are reactionary. We need to focus on preventative measures of crime stopping, right? As long as we continue to focus on
yeah,
reactionary measures of stopping crime, we're going to have the same issues. It'll always be the same issues because they're just focused
yeah.
on stopping crime after the fact.
Well,
They also just
that's
they
the other
don't do
problem that I
anything.
have. The police, most police funding and work. So I look at the system the way it's intended the way it functions right now. So, for instance, police, they arrest a felon, right? Somebody who probably, like we were talking earlier, we'll go for example the drug problem. I agree with you on that statement. Drug use is a victimless crime. Drug distribution, that's a different story. And littering, aka leaving your fucking needles out in the street, that is a crime, but not the use of the drugs. But the problem is these people get arrested, and then I have to pay 50% of the money that I make on taxes in order to house and feed people who are capable of housing and feeding themselves if they were just left the hell alone. But then there's other people in the prison system who rightfully deserve to be there, but at the same time, with my worldviews, I think that a lot of people should be executed. Now, I don't
Oh
mean
yeah,
a lot of people. Sorry,
we're gonna disagree with that heavily.
you say what again?
I said we're gonna disagree there heavily.
So I'm going to backtrack just a little bit. I don't mean a lot of people as in a lot of the people in the system right now. I just mean a lot of people in general, more specifically pedophiles and rapists.
Yeah, listen, I just to be I fully understand the drive to where if somebody hurts your kid, wanting to end that person's life, and I'm not going to criticize somebody for that want or desire. I just don't think the state should have the ability to kill its citizens.
No, no, definitely not. I actually do not want it to be a state-run matter for that. I don't think I said that earlier. I I personally believe that the government is at a point where it is beyond corruption to the point it's unsalvageable. But more, I would prefer honestly, I'd prefer Wild West justice, but I know that that's not a system that functions.
Yeah, and I just think in a country where a lot of people have been falsely accused of things and killed, might not
I
be the
wouldn't say
best.
personal vendetta executions. I would say more. It sucks because there's really not a good way to go about it. We haven't come up with a good system, and even no matter what I say, someone's going to disagree with what I have to say. And again, I know my opinion doesn't fit everyone, and I know that in some cases my opinion may be wrong. But that's why it's like, hey, I agree on certain things with you. I'm
Hmm.
not. I'm not. It sucks.
So I
I
guess I'm
look at the
wondering. You
world.
said you were a Republican. What specifically about the Republican platform is it that you connect with, that you're like, oh, I'm voting Republican because of X or because of Y?
Oh, I'm not voting. So first of all, I don't do social media. I just don't. I vote Republican simply because I have found Democratic and liberal to be worse options garnering their history. Now, granted, if a good Democratic or liberal candidate came along, for instance, I'm looking at Kennedy right now. He's actually got a good shot at taking my vote, but I've mostly voted Republican simply out of the fact of I want to protect my country. I want my country to be safe, and I want my country to come first. It's self-centered, sure, but that's the kind of world we live in. If you go to Germany, Germans put their country first. If you go to Australia, Australians usually, well, no, not Australia. If you go to Russia, before what happened recently, Russians were putting their country first. And it sucks
Okay.
to me that we're in this kind of situation. And honestly, people are right. Republicans, why Germany is the first example, simply because I have 3 German friends who talk about how much they love their country. That is another great point. Germany does have free university for anyone, regardless of race, nationality. Um,
I mean, it
and
just sounds
honestly,
like you don't really vibe with most of like the Republican platform.
no, I don't. I just vote it because to me it's the least bad option.
What specific Democratic policies have you been not a fan of? I don't
So,
like either.
my,
Just FYI, like I'm a
no,
communist,
no,
so
I
I don't
got
like
you.
either Democrats or Republicans. I don't like any capitalists. But like, what specifically? Yeah, what specifically have you?
So, we'll start with Democrats. On the one hand, as soon as Joe Biden entered into office, they started doing the pissing contest where he basically said, "All right, let's undo a bunch of stuff that Donald Trump did, just like I said I'm going to do." So nothing actually got done the first year in office. The
Sure, but
second year
I
in
would just say
office,
that was the same. That's the same when a Republican comes into office, right? They do the exact same
yeah,
thing.
it's the same thing either way. I'm definitely not arguing that fact. As soon as Donald Trump comes into office, he's going to undo a bunch of shit that he did, just like he did when he did it to Obama. But it's oh, this is the hard stuff to talk about for me because I'm an INTP personality type, so I try to look at things logical, but there really isn't any logic to find in politics, is there?
No, but I would say if I'm just looking at like which group currently has the best, or if I'm looking at which Republican or Democrat who right now has an actual plan, it would seem to be the Democrats, right? I don't like either, but it would seem to be the Democrats are the only ones with any actual plans. Republicans' whole thing is just
So
woke border
are
crisis,
you
woke.
aware of the sex trafficking going on in help part by the Democratic Party at this time?
How, okay, how has the Democratic Party helped sex trafficking?
Okay, so starting in New York, this is just one story I'm aware of right off the top of my head. There is a group that utilizes free passes given to immigrants after they cross the border. Mind you, they haven't been given citizenship or anything that essentially allows them to use public transportation for free. Now, hold on. I take back that entire section of my argument. It has been disproven officially. Sorry.
Okay.
No, I'm not even gonna try and argue something that's false. Sorry.
All right, no problem then.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, at this point, it sucks.
Yeah, but like, what specifically sucks is what
The entire system, to be honest.
Sure. Again, I'm a communist.
I guess we can agree on that.
I don't like the system in any way, shape, or form. It just seems like if I was looking at like who's proposing better things, it seems to be that the Democrats tend to be usually the ones proposing better policies, and the Republicans tend to just be, like I said, woke, border crisis woke.
Yeah. Honestly, it's a whole situation. The border crisis could be summed up in really just, oh, no more illegal immigrants. Well, you're going to have them either way. I guess the better way would be to have a better border policy allowing them to come in legally.
Yeah, I don't think either Republicans or Democrats are trying to make.
That's why I worked up the. Sorry, I'm just responding to someone in your chat. You are probably right, Zapoto. It took a lot of balls for me to work up the courage to actually talk to someone on the other side about it.
Yeah, I just think when I look at, first of all, I think they're both kind of lame, right? Like I think both, but when I'm looking at like who's at least trying to have some semblance of a plan, it does not appear to be Republicans in the slightest. They seem to just be trying to win off of, for a group that claims they hate identity politics, they seem to sure love to use identity politics a lot.
Yeah.
So that would be what it appears for, in my view anyway.
Okay, well, all right. I've heard I agree with some of your points. I disagree. This has been a wonderful talk. Obviously, this is my first time ever doing this, so I apologize for talking over you to your chat. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day and you stay safe out there.
All right, you too. Have a good one.